Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Chief Sweet and today I'm going to teach you how to take care of a baby bearded dragon. So you just got a baby bearded dragon and you're wondering what to do, I got you. So congratulations first off, but first thing we're going to talk about is enclosure size. How big of a tank do you need for a baby bearded dragon? And since it is so small, is it okay to get a larger tank? I hear this a lot, but a lot of people say that larger tanks stress babies out. That is false. That does not happen. If that happened, then how do they survive in the wild where there's no limitations? It's just freedom in all directions. So the minimum size for an adult bearded dragon is a 4x2x2. That's 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, which is a 120-gallon enclosure. So you can go ahead and start off your baby bearded dragon in something that large. Why is that? Is most of the time baby bearded dragons grow relatively fast. And a lot of times when you get a baby bearded dragon, he's already 3 to 4 months old, or he could be older, and you're already on the pace for him to be adult size. Now bearded dragons get to up to 2 feet long. That's why a 4x2x2 is the minimum, because they're 2 feet and they have 2 feet of space, pretty much their body length just to move around. So if you want to go bigger, you can go right ahead and go bigger. However, I know a lot of people get a 40-gallon or a 36-inch by 18-inch by 18-inch enclosure for their bearded dragons as a starter kit. That's the most common one out there. And if you got that for your baby bearded dragon, that's okay, but you need to know you are going to have to upgrade in the future. So enclosure is easy, right? 4x2x2 for adults, 40-gallon for babies, but this is an extreme, where we're about to jump into is lighting and heat, and that is one of the most important parts of taking care of a bearded dragon. It is essential to their health. If you don't provide good heat, good UVB, your bearded dragon could get metabolic bone disease, get sicknesses and ailments. You need appropriate lighting and heat. So let's get into it, shall we? So right off the bat, this video only pertains to 40-gallon tanks and 120-gallon tanks. For a 40-gallon tank, use an Arcadia 12% T5 high output 24-inch 24-watt bulb. That's perfect for that enclosure. If you're going to use a 4x2x2 and you're going to put the light on top of the tank, get an Arcadia 14% T5 high output 24-watt 24-inch tube linear UVB bulb. Both those UVB bulbs are perfect. They've been tested, they're tried, they're true, they're amazing, they're the best on the market. And no, they did not pay me to say this. People always think they pay me to say this. No, but I've tested. If there was a better option, I would have it on here. But I have this right here. This right here measures UVB. It's a solar meter. You could take it outside, measure the UVB, and those are absolutely reliable. Not only that, they last a year. And I've tested tons of UVB lamps on the market and they just do not give what a bearded dragon needs. And honestly, you have to stay away from coil UVB bulbs. I see this all the time. They have the coil UVB bulbs. Those produce absolutely nothing. Now they do produce a tiny, they produce enough for a leopard gecko, which doesn't even come out during the day most of the time. It's literally asleep most of the day. It produces enough UVB for that. It's not enough for a bearded dragon. Stay away from coil UVB bulbs. Stay away from like Reptizoo UVB, any of the weird UVB ones. Like a lot of people think, oh, I'm gonna get this for cheap because the Arcadia ones are $75, and they're like, oh, this one's $40. It's gonna be okay. So you're signing your bearded dragon up to have no UVB, metabolic bone disease, sickness. That's what you're gonna do by going cheap. $75, it lasts an entire year. And with testing like this, a lot of my Arcadia bulbs are on 2 years producing perfect UVB, not been replaced. They're absolutely killing it. It is the best on the market, and that's what you need to get. So no coil UVB bulbs. Don't get mercury vapor bulbs because that's like the all-in-one. It gets UVB and daylight heat. Don't do that because it's inconsistent. You're not gonna know where to put it. The Arcadia is good for the 40-gallon tank, the 12%. The 14% is good for the 4x2x2. Bam, easy. So you have one essential part of the lighting and the heat. Now we need to talk about the heat. This is essential. Bearded dragons live in the desert. They're cold-blooded creatures, so they need heat to get their body up to temperatures they need to digest their food. What is that? You're gonna have to use a halogen or incandescent heat bulb. You can get these at pet stores. You can get these at like hardware stores, like halogen floodlights in the hardware department, but Congress in the United States and all over the world, they've been pretty much discontinuing those products. So the only place you get those is, unfortunately, pet stores. And they're very expensive. Before you could get them for like $3 a bulb, $5 a bulb. Now you have to go to a pet store where it's like $20 to $30 a bulb. I know, but it is essential and you need it. Now the bulbs you want to stay away from, I see this all the time. Stay away for bearded dragons. Stay away from the red heat bulbs, the blue heat bulbs, the moonlight, all of that. You just want a regular basking bulb, halogen heat lamp like from Arcadia, Zoomed. Now heat bulbs, honestly, any of them will do, but just stay away from the colored ones like the red, the blue, the moonlight, like darkness, like the black light ones. Stay away from those at all times. Just you need halogen heat, that's what you want. Or incandescent, I'm sorry. You just need a basking bulb is what you need. Any of the basking bulbs work, like the Exoterras, the Arcadias, the Zoomeds, they all work perfectly fine. The Thrive, all of them work perfectly fine. So pick whichever one you want and use that. But I do get this question a lot, and I can't answer this one perfectly because it depends. People are always asking me, what wattage do I get for the tank? Now I'm gonna go ahead and give you some starting points, and you could go off of that. So for the 40-gallon tank, you can start off with one lamp with a 100-watt heat bulb in it. Remember, it has to be a heat bulb, can't be LED, has to be heat to produce heat for your bearded dragon. You can use one for a 40-gallon tank. Start off with that. For a 120-gallon 4x2x2, you can start off with two of those. Two 100-watt lamps. You could even drop them down to 75 watts a piece. And that is because everyone's temperatures in their house, where they're from, is different. You can live in Alaska where it's super cold outside, it's cold in your house, so you do need two heat lamps for your 120-gallon enclosure, and they have to be 150 watts because the air temperature is so cold in your house. It's like 50 degrees in your house. You have a bearded dragon, you need to bring up those temps. But say you live in Texas, it's summertime heat. It is 85 degrees in your house. Even for a 4x2x2, you may only need one heat lamp because it will get you to those optimal temperatures, which we'll talk about the temperatures and why this is so important as well after this. But I'm just telling you, like for the heat, you might use one bulb. The wattages depend. You might have to go up in wattage to provide more heat, down in wattage. You have to play around with it, and that's why it can be a little hard, a little confusing. You might have to buy two heat lamps. It sucks, I know, but welcome to the club. This is all part of the experience. But what we're doing really with the heat lamp and the UVB is we're trying to replicate the sun. We're trying to replicate the sun for the bearded dragon because that's how they just get healthy. They go out and they bask in the sun. What does basking mean? If they go out and they just sit in the sun, they suntan and they just soak in the UV rays. They get the warmth. They get the optimal body temperature, which is 97 degrees. And then they're like, now I can go on with my day. I'm good. But humans, we already have our optimal body temperature. It's already there. It's already there chilling inside of us. We make our own, but this is a cold-blooded species. So that's why they need the lights to get them to that temperature. So there you go, the lighting. I know it's a little bit tricky, it's a lot to take in, but I also get asked this question a lot. Do they need heat at night? No. Also, turn all the lights off at night. Remember, we're mimicking daytime to nighttime. That's where they want. In the night, it is completely dark. It's so dark in the nighttime. You go outside, it's completely dark. And also, a lot of people are like, does it need heat at nighttime? No, bearded dragons are from the desert. It gets extremely cold in the desert. Why is that? It's because sand does not hold in heat very well. So when the heat's just blasting, it's like 140 on the sand. They're not on it at that time of the day. It's just like that. I'm just giving you a temperature. But it's just blasting sand. It's super hot. And as soon as the sun goes down, that heat just escapes. And it gets incredibly... If you've ever been to a desert at nighttime, you know what I'm talking about. It gets cold, and so these bearded dragons are very used to that. They're okay with that. So if your temperatures in your house, a lot of people get scared. They're like, it's 60 degrees in my house. Your bearded dragon's fine. It's honestly a little bit healthier for him because when he's cold, as soon as the lights turn on in his enclosure, my goodness, I can't speak right now, forgive me. But his enclosure lights turn on, he's gonna see that heat, he's gonna run over there immediately and go bask and get his temperature to the optimal stuff. If you have a hot area, if you're putting heat on him at nighttime, why would he ever go bask, get the UVB he needs? So don't worry, no heat at night unless it's like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, like really cold, then yes. And how you provide heat without the light because he needs to sleep is you could get a deep heat projector or a ceramic heat emitter that produce no light but produce heat. And it's not strong heat, it's enough to just bring up the ambient temperatures a little bit so he's not freezing. Now, I do get asked this question as well, and don't worry, like I said, you don't have to worry. A lot of people freak out. It's okay. We all do when we get our first reptile, and there's so much information, and we're trying to wonder what's good, what's not good. But a lot of people freak out because they're like, what about the lights in my room? See, I have all these, but there's also lights in my room, and these lights, I turn off these lights. What about me playing video games, watching TV? Well, That's okay because he is in an enclosure, and when those lights go off in the enclosure, since it is enclosed, it gets very dark inside. And you could black out the sides with like cardboard or some decorative wallpapers, so that way it even blocks it in more. So that way when the lights go off in the cage, it's even darker. But I play video games all night long, and I have lights on, and my stuff sleep as soon as the lights that are on the tank go out. So does the bearded dragons. They're just immediately just sleeping. They find a log, they sit on it, and they're just sleep, knocked out. Totally knocked out, having a great sleep. The lights turn on, and they're immediately awake. So don't worry about the interior lights of your living room or whatever. As long as the lights on top of the tank go off, you are good. And you can, like I said, black out the sides with like, I don't know, a sheet or something like that around the sides. So that way it can, if you're worried about it. But other than that, he will be fine. So we talked about the basking light heat. What does the heat need to be inside of the enclosure to be perfect for your bearded dragon? So you're going to be looking at basking temperature. What does that mean? Okay, you have your lamp right here, and it's pointing down. What it's doing is it's creating an area of heat. It's radiating heat out of the bulb, and it's coming down. It's usually a cone shape, and it's coming down. Whatever it's hitting, which is usually a rock, say the lamp is coming down and the heat radiating is hitting the rock, that area needs to be in between 104 degrees to 110 degrees. Max, do not let it get over 115. That's way too hot, but around that area is perfectly fine. That is what bearded dragons want. They want that basking spot to be 104 to 110 degrees. And it differs because some dragons like it a little hotter. Some dragons like it a little cooler, but that's a good temperature to get your bearded dragon to the optimal internal temperature it needs. Now there is a difference between surface temperature, the basking temperature, which is the heat radiating from the bulb pointing down, and the air temperature. So the air temperature is just what's the air of the cage. It's going to be on the cool side of the cage. And you want the cool side of the cage to be around 70 degrees, 70 to mid 80s, that's okay. And on the hot side, you want it like 80s and 90s, but you don't want the hot side to get above 100 degrees. When it gets above 100 degrees, you might have to turn off the heat lamp, but what you can do is you can use a thermostat. Thermostats are extraordinarily helpful, and I highly recommend you to use one at all times, but it's this little probe. I have an entire video on it as well, but I don't have a thermostat on me. I was going to look for one. Anyways, there's this little probe. You put it in your enclosure, and then you plug your lamp into it, and you can set it to where if it gets to that temperature, it turns the lamp off. So you don't have to worry about fires. You don't have to worry about overheating your bearded dragon. It is extremely helpful. But you don't want it to dim it too much or turn it off all the time. So that's why you need the right wattage for the lamp and for your bearded dragon. So with all the temperatures, the heating, the lighting, let's talk about humidity. You might have heard of humidity quite a bit. A lot of people talk about humidity. And this is something that scares a lot of keepers. But you don't have to, honestly, any humidity is fine. That's totally fine. The reason I say this is because there's bearded dragon breeders who breed their bearded dragons outdoors in Florida in extremely humid weather. And those bearded dragons are beautiful, perfectly healthy, have generations of babies. Don't worry about humidity, okay? You don't have to worry about humidity. What you have to worry about is wetness inside of the tank. If your tank is like moist, swampy, it's wet all over the place, that's what you have to worry about. As long as it's getting dry, and even if the substrate is a little moist, it'll dry out. Most of the time, people really worry about humidity. And you only have to worry about humidity is if it's extremely cold and it's humid and wet. If you don't have any heat and it's just wet and cold, that's a recipe for being sick. But if it's humid and you're just providing great heat, it looks dry in the enclosure, that's perfectly fine. A lot of people worry about humidity, but like I said, people have bred bearded dragons in extremely humid places outdoors, and those dragons are totally fine. Even in my room right now, it's 50% humidity in my room. My bearded dragons are perfectly fine, have no care in the world, because inside the cage, that heat lamp is radiating heat, drying the air out. It's drying it out, so don't worry too much about the humidity. Most of the time, it's totally fine. As long as it's not like dripping wet like a rainforest inside of the enclosure, then you will be fine. So moving on to the next thing, and this is an extremely important thing, diet. What do bearded dragons eat? How do they drink? What do they live on? And I will say this, bearded dragons are omnivores, which means they eat plants and insects. They're going to eat both. And this is very important. You need live insects. Do not get dried insects. Do not get dried food pellets. Stay away from those. And you're probably asking, why do I need to stay away from dry stuff? Well, this is the reason why. And I'm not really going to talk about water too much. I have an entire video about water, but bearded dragons really don't drink water very often. Now, I do highly recommend, if you want to keep your bearded dragon hydrated, you could get like a little sprayer, drip it in front of him or around him, and let him see the water dripping down. You can drip it on his nose and see if he will drink that. But bearded dragons in the wild and in captivity stay hydrated through live insects, the moisture content of live insects, and greens. The greens they eat hydrates them. And you'll know this, if you put the water bowl in there, they're not going to be very interested in the water bowl. And if they are, that's good. That means they were just really thirsty. So provide water at all times, but you're not going to see them drink water all the time like how we do. We wake up, drink a whole gallon of water, and we're just like, oh, so thirsty. Bearded dragons are not that way. They're very good at conserving that water, and they get all that moisture content, they soak it up, and they keep it in them from the greens and the insects. So we've talked about the water, let's get into the insects. What type of insects do bearded dragons eat? Well, you can get insects like dubia roaches, crickets, hissing cockroaches. If you get hissing cockroaches, get the juvenile ones, not the adult ones. Don't get those ones. Their exoskeleton is way too hard. You can feed them mealworms, hornworms, waxworms, black soldier fly larvae. There's so much you can feed a bearded dragon from a pet store, but I will say superworms, they are a good treat. You need to treat superworms as a treat because bearded dragons, it's like crack to bearded dragons. They become addicted to the superworm. Bearded dragons love superworms so much, and they're great for them, but they're extremely fattening. And you want to make sure that your bearded dragon doesn't get fat and obese, because what happens when it gets fat and obese, just like humans, you get liver damage, you could get just bad overweight, bad for the heart, bad for the health of bearded dragons. You want your bearded dragon not to get too fat and not to be addicted to superworms, because when you start feeding him superworms too much, he will literally not want anything else. He will be like, no, I don't want nothing. I just want this, just give me that. He'll refuse to eat, and he'll just be like, give me the superworm. So make sure to be very careful giving superworms. Now, how many insects do you feed your bearded dragon? This is a great question, and you only need to feed your bearded dragon once a day. That's it. Your baby bearded dragon only once a day, 5 to 6 insects, and you're totally fine. Now, what size insects do you need to feed them? You pretty much need to feed them an insect about the size of the length between their eyes. I'll have a graph right here to show you, but around that size, 5 to 6 per day, and that's totally fine. It can range between dubia roaches, crickets, any type of those. Make sure to provide a variety. Just don't constantly feed them one thing. Switch it up every day. Feed them something new every single day. Now, you feed them daily for an entire year with greens. It's very important to provide a salad for your bearded dragon. Now, stuff you can stay away from is like iceberg lettuce, because it's mainly just water, but I like to feed greens for my bearded dragon. A daily staple is collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, spring mix, but take the spinach out of the spring mix. Make sure to do that. It's okay for them, but too much spinach, it will take their calcium away. That's why you need the UVB. So it binds with calcium. Just make sure you can feed them spinach like once a month, but you do not need to feed spinach every day of the week or weekly. Very rarely. Feed it rarely. So when you get spring mix, take that out. You could feed them arugula and tons of other greens. But what you want to stay away from is fruits. You need to stay away from fruits. No fruits at all. Why is that? Because again, high sugar. You don't want too much sugar in your bearded dragon's diet. There's way too much sugar for a bearded dragon. Do not give them fruits. And so that's very important, because a lot of people always ask me, like, do I give them blueberries? Do I give them this? No. Do I give them watermelon? No. Stay away from those. I also feed my bearded dragons romaine lettuce. Again, people are like, you might hear people say, oh, stay away from romaine lettuce, it's not good for them. All it is it's very high in water content, so it is very good for them because it offers hydration. So I feed romaine lettuce like once a week to my bearded dragon, so that way I know deep down he is getting great hydration. So we talked about the food, but there's one thing we have to talk about, and that is supplementation for the food. Vitamins for your bearded dragon. So for your bearded dragon, with the calcium supplements, you can dust it 1 to as much every day of the week if you want to. I like to keep it around 3 times. Sometimes I just do 1. It really depends, because as long as you provide a good variety of diet, the calcium is very good for the bearded dragon because they are growing. They need that calcium for good bone growth, and if they don't get a good amount of calcium, because a lot of the insects we feed in the hobby don't have very high calcium, and they have high phosphorus, and phosphorus is another one of those things that binds with calcium. So you have to add that extra calcium. And I know you're like, what about in the wild? In the wild, they don't actually eat the same things we provide, and the stuff in the wild is extremely high in calcium, and it's very low in phosphorus, so that's why we have to supplement in captivity. Besides the calcium, multivitamins. Multivitamins like Reptivite, Repashy, there's tons of multivitamins out there. A lot of them are very great. They're pretty much all the same, but I like to use a multivitamin once every 2 weeks. That's how I'll use once every 2 weeks, and you're perfectly good. You can even use it once a month if you want to, but it's up to you. Once a month or once every 2 weeks, whichever one you prefer. And now we are done with all of that. We can get to the fun stuff, decorating your enclosure. So bearded dragons are actually arboreal, which means they like to climb trees. Bearded dragons climb trees, fence posts, they love to climb. So in your enclosure, you need to provide lots of branches and climbing opportunities for your bearded dragon. Not only that, you need to provide rocks and hides. Now, the reason you need to provide some rocks is because bearded dragons, when they shed, they're going to want to rub up against them. They're going to want to rub the shed of their skin off. And when they shed, don't get too worried. A lot of people freak out because they start turning colors. They get a little lighter. They get gray. That's perfectly normal. That just means they're going to shed. And when bearded dragons grow, they shed. And they're going to be shedding a lot when they're babies. So you need to provide them something rough where they can rub that old skin off their body. And that's why rocks is such a great thing to provide in enclosure. You can get rocks and branches from outside. Just make sure they don't have no insects on them. You can put them in your enclosure. They're perfectly fine. You just have to make sure they have no types of things on them. There's ways you can disinfect it as well. But a rock, all I do is I get it, I wash it off, I put it in the enclosure, bam, we're done. And the decor wise, you can get creative. Get creative, you can do it however you want to, and that's up to you. But I'm not really that creative with my decorations, and I try to be, but I'm just not. Also, one thing to say is substrate. Substrate is the dirt. What do you provide as the dirt on the bottom of the enclosure? Well, I can tell you what not to provide. What you want to stay away from is ground walnut shells because it's not natural substrate. Reptile carpet, they can get their nails stuck. It harbors bacteria. You also want to stay away from calcium sand. Is another thing. It's not natural. It's not a natural substrate. You want to go with natural substrates like sand, like topsoil. You can mix topsoil and sand together. You can also use Repti sand, Australian sand. Australian sand is actually straight from Australia. I have all this linked in the description of my video. It's all Australian sand is straight from Australia. You can get that, put that in enclosure, it's perfectly fine. A lot of people like to do a cheap version, and this version is pretty much topsoil and play sand from Home Depot. It costs like $10, and you get 90 pounds of substrate. You can mix them together 50-50, 60-40 ratio, however you want to do it. Mix those together, put them in the tank. It looks great. So now moving away from decor, we need to talk about behaviors. Your bearded dragon's going to be doing stuff, and you might be wondering, what is he doing? And one of those things is if he's sitting on the basking spot or somewhere in his enclosure, he gets a little too hot, he might open his mouth and breathe. He might just be like, ah. When he does that, what he's doing is he's thermoregulating his body. He's cooling off his temperatures. And this is perfectly normal. The only time it's not normal is if he's sleeping in the middle of the night and he looks like he's having trouble breathing. He's like, ah. And he's like breathing through his mouth in the middle of the night. That could be a respiratory infection, and you need to go see a vet. But other than that, during the day, it's perfectly normal. It's how they cool off. No worries about that at all. Another one you might see is their eyes just bulge out. They just swell their eyes up super huge, and that's what they do before they shed. They do that quite a bit. Another one you might see is they flex their whole body out, their beard, and that's normal. A lot of things they do when they were about to shed or they just got after shedding, they're just kind of like getting in their skin. They do that quite a bit. Perfectly normal, nothing to worry about. One cool thing you might see your baby bearded dragon do is that is waving. And this is a sign, which also I meant to put in this video, but do not house bearded dragons together. Bearded dragons are very opportunistic feeders. In the wild, there's not a lot of food going around. So what do? They eat each other. But a lot of times they have a friendly way of saying hi to each other to be like, don't hurt me, I'm okay, I'm fine, I am submissive, you're the boss, please don't hurt me. And they wave. They'll wave at each other to let them know, like, hey, I'm a bearded dragon. Please, I'm being submissive. Do not hurt me. I am your friend. I'm here. It's okay. So if you see your bearded dragon doing that, he is telling you, or he might see his reflection saying like, I'm friendly. I'm okay. I'm being submissive. Please don't hurt me. So that's also why it's very important. Do not do not put two bearded dragons in the enclosure because eventually they're going to fight. It doesn't matter if they're siblings. I've bred bearded dragons from babies, and as soon as they're babies, they will start trying to nip at each other and bite each other. They bite each other's toes off. So they are not good to be housed together. You need to have individual bearded dragons separate. I know what you're thinking. How do they breed in the wild if they do this? Well, they have so much wild space, they don't really run into each other that often. And when breeding season comes, they're going to find a mate. That's when they run into each other. And even then, it can be very deadly. The female could be like, I don't want nothing to do with it, and they start fighting. Like I said, These are solitary animals. They want to be alone. They don't want to have friends. They want to be alone and left by themselves and chill. So do not house multiple bearded dragons together. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I was helpful. If you have any questions, drop those down in the comments, or you can join my Discord to ask me directly. Like and subscribe if I helped you. I'll see you next time.